Welcome to From Beyond with your host, Glenn Boddice. Join me as we explore spirituality, self-help, and channeling spirit. Hello and welcome to From Beyond with your host Glenn Boddice, spiritual medium. Thank you for tuning in for another deep dive action-packed episode. As in this week's episode, we're going to be looking at the topic, the thinning of the veil. Also in this week's episode, we have the channeling from the world of spirit, which sees me becoming a vessel for spirit to bring their wisdoms and communications through. And then later on in this episode, we have a sneaky peek into this week's energy forecast reading. So sit back, hold on tight, and join me as we start this episode by diving deep, by talking about the thinning of the veil. What are we talking about? The veil. Well, we're talking about between worlds and dimensions, the different frequencies, the different activities, the different things that are occurring all around us at every single moment, at every single day. Even if we are not perceiving it being there on a vibrational level, it is there and it is all happening right here, right now. And in my belief, I like to use the analogy of a radio basically, and you're tuning in different channels of that radio. Now, just because you're focused and you're dialing in to one specific channel and you're listening to that channel, doesn't mean that there's not other channels on that radio. There clearly is. It's just where you place your focus on becomes your experience. So if you focus and turn the dial, you can experience another channel all on that radio. It's all happening at the same time. So using that analogy, I believe, and it is in my experience, that all of these activities, dimensions, different worlds are all occurring in the now moment. And it's where we have placed our intentional focus, whether consciously we believe we're putting our consciousness at a certain point, or we're just simply acting on default settings. But we all have the ability and potential to investigate and explore and experience these different vibrations, different worlds and different frequencies that are happening all at the same time. And to me, the thinning of the veil is a case where we are living in our now moment consciousness, experiencing our life, but because there's been some sort of dramatic change in the universe, and I'll dive into that a little bit deeper in a moment, that the lines are blurred. And so not only are we having the experience of our lives, but we're also having a sneaky peek into other dimensions, in other frequencies, other timelines that are happening, as I say, all within the same moment of time. And it is my experience and in my belief that the thinning of the veil is happening right now. And there will be many of you listening to this that have had some very weird and wonderful experiences, I want to say, over the last 12 months, because I feel as though things have been ramping up towards this year. And that's not to say that this year is more dramatically important than any year that went before it. I just feel as though there's significant changes that are occurring on a vibrational level in the universe that's allowing it to be at the forefront of our experience, shall we say. And another reason why I also believe that this is becoming more frequent with people, individuals, I believe that on some level, the human DNA activation has been switched on. And what I mean by that, you will have heard of people talking about that we have so much junk DNA in the physical body, information, codes that are just there, but the scientific community and the medical community haven't found the specific uses why we have that junk DNA in our system. And it is in one of my beliefs that a lot of that DNA was here to serve us so that we can interact and we are more, shall we say, magnificent than we believe we are. And I'm not saying that to bolster and feed anybody's ego, but what I mean by that is that we all have certain abilities that came natural to us, that for some way, shape or form, there has been a significant amount of changes that have switched off those antennae, those DNA, those coding, those instructions. And as we know, speaking about DNA, like if we use it in terms of computer language, like coding and instructions, programming. And we know that a computer will only do what we tell it to do in terms of programming. So if we tell it to produce this picture and we put all the coding in, it's going to produce that picture. If we take elements out of that coding, it's going to have a distortion on that picture and that experience of perceiving that information that we're wanting to view on that computer. Some people call it a corrupt file, for example, if certain elements and codes have been extracted or other codes have been added and it's made a corrupt file. And the reason why I use this computer language analogy is because I believe with the human DNA, there's been some sort of intervention where the coding, our original source coding, has been tampered with and switched off. And therefore, we are perceiving it as junk DNA, non-functioning shall we call it, instructions, programming. But in actual fact, I believe that now a lot of that junk DNA is now being switched on, being activated. And I feel this is happening through the universal alignment, vibration, frequencies, energies are switching those codings, those instructions, those programmings on. And with this being said, I feel a lot of us are having some very interesting experiences as a result of this. And this is why we're talking about the thinning of the veil. We perceive that something's changed externally, and in many aspects, it has potentially. But I feel as though it's the way that we're perceiving our world around us and our experience of the vibrations around us that has changed. These things have happened, as I said, using the analogy of different radio stations on a radio. They're all happening at the same time. It's where we shift our focus. That is our definitive experience. And I believe that because these DNA reconfigurations have been switched on, we're all having experiences beyond the five senses, and we're able to have an experience of a colliding, shall we say, dimension in our dimension. We're able to see people, beings, portals, light anomalies, and also a lot of people, this has gone out there on the internet, on various social media platforms, where people have videoed footage of such as planes stopping in midair. You can hear the engines, almost like a simulation, but the plane isn't moving, and it defies everything we know about how planes stay in the air. Yet we're having this encounter, like almost as if we're tapping into truth vibrations, or there's something wrong with the coding that I mentioned, or the coding has been tampered with, or our perceptions have been tampered with, and we're able to see behind the scenes footage as it's happening in real time. So I know I'm diving very deep, and in many aspects I'm confusing myself with bringing all this information forward. But I believe, anyway, getting back on track, that is one of the reasons why we're experiencing the thinning of the veil. Another reason I feel is there is a multi-layered vibrational alignment that's happening in the universe. And this, as I said earlier, is switching on a lot of this junk DNA in the human body, enabling us to discover new gifts, new abilities, see and experience other dimensions and other worlds. And also I feel as though it's had a knock-on effect with the energies in our environment. And I feel as though a lot of this has been happening for a few years now, but it's ramping up and it's becoming more obvious to the layman, so to speak. And what I mean by that is you don't particularly have to be a medium or sensitive to have some of these encounters, because I do feel as though a lot of this is being switched on and being operated behind the scenes on a universal level. But what you will notice is your 5 senses. So what are the 5 senses? Just to remind us all, we've got the sight, we've got the hearing, we've got the smell, we've got the taste, we've got the touch, haven't we? And we can go on and on with other senses, but they're the predominant 5 senses. So what you will notice is that they will be more sensitive and more amplified than what you're potentially used to in your day-to-day living. And with this being said, you may notice colours appear more brighter, more vibrant than they once did. You may even notice light anomalies, I'll try and say that, at the corner of your eye, or even shadows of silhouettes of people that aren't there in the physical, yet you see them with your eyes. With hearing, you may hear disembodied voices or chatter, and you go in a room and there's nobody there, nothing's there, yet you can hear it as plain as day. Also, with smelling, excuse me, you may be able to smell various aromas that aren't actually there, and it's not possible for them to be there because there's nothing creating that smell in the environment. And we're brought up to believe that if nothing's creating it, then it has to be a little bit unusual. Tasting things, touching, sensing things as well. A lot of the 5 senses are being amplified, as I say, and this is how we interact with our world, isn't it? The 5 senses feed information to the brain decodes that information and creates our perception of it. So it's going back to computer language again with coding. You know, the senses are picking up information and the brain is decoding it and making it more manageable for us to experience and understand the environment in which we are in. So you will notice they're going to be activated on a deep level. I want to say also, with this being the case, like the title suggests of the show, The Thinning of the Veil, there's going to be an increased ability to interact with external sources. And what I'm talking about there, I'm talking about vibrational energy. I'm talking about thought energy. Now, thought energy is an interesting one because, as I've said many, many times before, we are all transmitters and receivers of information. So with this being the case, when we have a thought in our mind, we're broadcasting that thought out into the ether, out into the universe, into the environment. And in many respects, this is how manifestation works as well. But with this being the case, all of the thoughts, now I'm going deep with this one, so hold on tight. All of the thoughts that everything, every animal, every insect, everything has ever had in all dimensions and in all directions of time are all happening in the now moment. So with this being the case, imagine, if you will, a busy highway, a busy motorway of information, of thought energy that never dies. It continues, and it continues to move on and on and on and on. And so with this being the case, your ability to interact with this information will be increased and has been ramped up, as I say, over the last few years. So we assume naturally that if we have a thought in our head, that is our thought because we are experiencing it. And as I said earlier, we are all transmitters and receivers of information. With this being the case, what's to say that that thought in your head isn't yours? It's just information that you're picking up on, either in the ether, in your environment. And this, as I say, thoughts never die. They continue and they're happening every single moment, every single day. It's all happening now. And you're just picking up on that information. You're having that experience and you believe that it's yours because it's in your head. Well, a way around that, I would say, is get into the habit of questioning the mind. Be a third party and say, well, why am I thinking that? I never would think that. Where's that thought arrived from? Where's it come from? What was I thinking before I thought that thought? Was there anything in my environment that was stimulating me to think and inspire that thought? I know I'm going very deep with this, but this is a way of deciphering what is your thoughts and what are the thoughts that you are picking up in the ether. So you can literally interact with the information, as I say, that is around you because of the thinning of the veil. It can be incredibly helpful. It can be distracting, and we'll go a little bit deeper with the pros and cons of this experience. But with this being the case, with you having the ability to interact with external sources and the thinning of the veil, I want to say that your family members, friends and loved ones, and your spirit guides in the world of spirit, we say the world of spirit as if it's far, far away, but in actual fact, it's all here. It's all now. It's happening right in this space that we occupy. It's just the fact that we are dialed in to a different frequency, our life, our experience, that we don't have the full interactions that we would potentially enjoy and appreciate. Yet what I'm suggesting, because the thinning of the veil, because the activation of this junk DNA being switched on, there's a lot more people having more what we would term as paranormal experiences because of this. And this is where our family members, guides and helpers find it potentially a lot easier to interact with us because we're heightening our vibration. They're matching that vibration by lowering their vibrational interaction so that we can have an interactive experience with them or of them. And it can be very beneficial when this occurs. As we know, we all like that reassurance that we're doing the right thing, that support that it's a good idea, carry on doing what you're doing. And sometimes when we're in our own head, we question everything that we do. And it's nice to have an external opinion on what we're doing and a little bit of encouragement. So I want to say, with the thinning of the veil, a lot of people are experiencing feeling that encouragement, feeling that healing, feeling that support and that love. Now, it is very subtle when it comes through, and it can come through the form of the warmth in your heart, that feeling, that strong connection, that knowing. You don't know how you know, why you know, but you just know and you feel it. And you, no matter how much you shake it off and try and think of something else or observe something else that's happening in your life, it is there. It is the forefront. To me, in my personal experience, this is your guides, your family members, friends in spirit that are drawing their presence closer and using the path of least resistance in order to communicate and convey information to you and also encouragement to you. Because let's face it, we all need it now and again, particularly in these times that we're all experiencing. Everything's changing very rapidly on planet Earth at the moment. And it leaves a lot of people second guessing themselves, their own judgments. And sometimes what I have experienced is that a lot of people may be at a different place vibrationally. So they're not going to align with you as a person. They're not going to get what you're talking about. And therefore they won't give you that encouragement because they have no understanding of what you're going through and what you're experiencing. And this is where that interaction from your guides, your family members, and loved ones, I'm going to term it the world of spirit, but as I've said, it is all happening here, right now, and it's just where we place our focus on. And for many, 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 many eons of time, we've had that ability either knocked out of us by, I want to say, reprogramming the subconscious mind, by the switching off of the so-called junk DNA, and these natural abilities have been dampened down, almost, I'll try and speak, ridiculed in some way, so that you feel embarrassed to actually explore and experience your family, friends and loved ones in your now moment consciousness. I told you we was diving deep, didn't I? So with this being said, it can really help you make more choice decisions, get in alignment with your life's purpose and your life's path. And so having that interaction will help you. So let's talk about the benefits of the veil thinning. Well, the benefits, as I've kind of alluded to already, are you being hypersensitive, awake and aware, seeing the truth vibrations, seeing what's happening and sensing what's happening behind the scenes, where the mass population, and I'm not pointing any fingers of blame or judgment with this, do not experience or see what's going off behind the scenes. So that is a benefit, in my opinion, because you get like, I want to call it like a second sight. You get a heads up. Let's use a modern term. You get a heads up before something is rolled out or experienced in your now moment consciousness. So to me, that is a benefit of the thinning of the veil. And also a benefit is seeing and experiencing life on a deeper level, where you're going to notice other realms, other vibrations, phenomena that you've maybe heard about that you haven't encountered yourself. So you get that first-hand experience of it. And to me, that is a benefit. That's a beautiful thing. It's nothing to be afraid of. It's just you moving into a new vibration so that you can experience these things all at the same time. And with me saying this, I want to say various timelines can overlap, so you can experience several things happening at the same time, but from different dimensions. So to me, that is a benefit. I class that as a benefit. So what are the disadvantages of the veil thinning? Again, it's all down to your own perception, what you perceive to be good or what you perceive to be bad. So some of you may find it's a disadvantage because there's all this vibrational, energetic noise that's happening to you in every single moment, in every single day that wasn't there before. Now, what am I talking about noise? I'm talking about the ears ringing quite a lot, like a high-pitched shrilling sound. It may have been described by the medical community as tinnitus or tinnitus, where it's continually there. To me, that is a frequency working with you and working with the brain. So that can be perceived as a disadvantage, having that happening quite a lot to you. Also a disadvantage, again, depending upon the way that you perceive things, could be the fact that you're getting all of these thoughts, other people's thoughts and ideas. And why am I thinking that? I don't want to think that. And yet that thought's in your head. And then another one daisy chains from that thought into maybe another thought that you would never think about or want to think about, for that matter. So like we said, this is potentially you tapping in to the thought vibrations, and it can get overwhelming to the point where your mind is continually active. Your five senses are continually on overdrive and stimulated, and you can feel very irritable if you haven't got an understanding or, some sort of management in place to cope with that. It can be quite overwhelming. And no matter what you try and do, where you try and go, it's continually there. It's happening all the time. So it can be perceived as a disadvantage. It can also have a knock-on effect with your sleep, where you don't have the same level of sleep that you've always had before. Maybe your sleep has gone from an 8-hour sleep to a 6-hour sleep, and that 6-hour sleep is intermittent. So you're being woken up at various points of your rest, and you're getting uncomfortable. Some people talk about sleep paralysis, where you wake up, your eyes are open, but you can't physically move your body. And it can be quite frightening when you have that experience. So potentially that would be a disadvantage of this thinning of the veil. Also seeing phenomena. Now, some people are frightened of it and don't have a full acknowledgement or understanding of phenomena, such as seeing spirit, for example, hearing disembodied voices, seeing portals open up. And if I may just share with you a little anecdote about myself seeing a portal opening up in my music room. And it was in front of the radiator. I just walked into the room, and I saw what I would describe as a white triangle. And it was, I would say, about 3 feet off the ground, probably the same height as a radiator is fixed on your wall. And this triangle was floating midair in front of the radiator. And it was very bright. And as I looked into the shape of the triangle, I could see something happening inside of it that wasn't in the room. Now, the triangle, I would say, was probably about 0.5 meter in height, or, in equal length in height and in width. And I could see activity. It looked like a different location, one that I was not familiar with at all, was happening, almost like looking at a TV screen, was happening in midair in this triangle. To me, it was almost like a portal had opened up, and I was seeing into that other universe from my perception. I found it personally absolutely incredible. It didn't last for long, probably less than, 5 seconds, but it was there. I saw it. I experienced it. Many people would be shocked by that and have themselves in fear mode and, maybe a little bit frightened. Whereas I saw the blessing in it. I felt very privileged to have that experience. So to some, that could be perceived as a disadvantage, seeing that. And what the hell is going off? Again, it's all down to perception, isn't it? And also our belief systems, what we've been taught throughout the course of our lives, what is possible, what isn't possible. Because let's face it, a lot of what we've been taught is around this subject is that you're making it up. Oh, you're daydreaming. Oh, you're just seeing things. Oh, did you watch a horror film last night? Did you watch something on the telly and it's playing back? Is it giving you some sort of visual nightmare there? Or, we can go down that avenue as much as we like, can't we? But we've all had some sort of level of social programming along the way that poo-poos, if you will, these experiences. So that would be my definition of some of the disadvantages of the thinning of the veil. I'd like to now discuss how to adapt in this new way of being, because I do feel as though that the thinning of the veil is going to be experienced by the majority of the population, mass population, and it's all at different times, but we're all going to arrive at the same destination. As you can imagine, we've got all old beliefs, subconscious programming, junk DNA not being activated, and the five senses being dulled down by whether that is programming, substance abuse, or it can be anything. But eventually, it is in my belief that we are all going to arrive at the same destination, but at different times, obviously, because of all that I've just mentioned there. So how to adapt in this new way of being? I would say have a very scholar-like mind where you're not afraid to question. And I think that is the big point of this, is not being afraid to question. Question what you're experiencing. Why is that happening? And try and debunk what's happening. And then also have that open mind where you're not fixed in either camp. And what I mean by that I'm imagining it, or yes, it's happening. Just be the observer of the experience. And what you will find is that will open your vibration up a little bit more. You won't be invested either side, but you're more accepting of what you're experiencing in the here and now. So that would be a little bit of advice to those of you that are experiencing these peculiar things that are happening. I say peculiar, but I'm talking from a perspective of people that haven't had these encounters that we're talking about before. It's going to appear strange. It's going to appear peculiar. But for most that have been having these encounters, it is perfectly natural and it's perfectly normal. They've adapted, they've accepted, and they've questioned, as I've said earlier, in order to arrive at that destination. So it is a very beautiful thing. But to adopt into these new frequencies, you just got to have an open mind, a curious mind, definitely, and remove the blocks, be open to change. Let's face it, on some level, we all have things that bring us joy, bring us comfort in our life, and we get comfortable. And, I like what I've got, thank you. Why would I want to change? But as we know, everything changes. Everything is evolving in every single second, every moment, every single day. Everything is changing, evolving, expanding. And that is to add to the greater good of the universe. And if we can just touch upon that quickly, what I mean by that is we're all parts of the same source, but we're all having different perspectives, different experiences, so that we can feed back that information back into the universe. So it educates the universe so that the universe can expand and have more information and more energy and just keep on growing and growing and growing. That is one of my beliefs anyway. So let's talk about some tests that you could maybe try about the thinning of the veil. As I've mentioned earlier, the five senses are paramount. They're very important, and it's where you place your focus. So you may want to run a series of tests around the thoughts that are coming into your mind, and again, questioning those thoughts. Why am I thinking this? I never would think that. Where was I when that thought entered my head? Who was round me when I was thinking that? What happened in that location when I was thinking that thought? And just your level of thinking will go a little bit deeper than perhaps it has done throughout the course of your life. But this test will help you to analyze whether it's your original thought or information that you're picking up and receiving from the environment or the people that are in it. Also tests the feelings that you feel when you're around locations and people. You may get a good feeling, a bad feeling. We all know what each one of those experiences are like. So you may want to get some validation on why you're feeling that way when you enter a certain building. Maybe do a little bit of research around that. Also around the person. Maybe, again, do a little bit of research. Ask their family and friends, have you noticed that when you're around this person, you feel like this? And this is not about finger pointing to that person. It's not about pulling them down or chastising them in any way. It's just about getting a general observation of and an understanding why you're having that experience around those people. So you may want to do that as part of your test there. You'll also notice that you'll feel magnetically drawn to either people, things, places, items, buildings, and that can be a test in itself, particularly when you do a bit of research. Well, why am I drawn to that building? Why am I getting that feeling when I go in that building? Why? Lots of whys. Whys are good in many respects because it shows that you are inquisitive, for one, and that you're deciphering your experience rather than just saying, oh yeah, this is happening because of this. You're taking it further, you're diving deeper, and you're not sitting on the fence. You're curious and you are expanding that consciousness that we spoke about earlier. You may even notice that you will hear songs playing out on the radio, and that song will be relevant to what you're thinking, and all these synchronicities will match up. That can be a test, particularly, again, when you deep dive, you do some research about your experiences and the information within the songs or what you're seeing, what you're observing. That's going to be, I want to say, a little bit of validation that no, you're not crazy, you're not going mad, you're experiencing it. Talk about it with like-minded friends and family that appreciate you and your sensitivity, and get some sort of bearing if they're having that encounter and that experience. As I say, we're all destined, in my opinion, to reach a point where we all experience the thinning of the veil, but at the moment, and it has happened for a few years now, where we're all having varied degrees of experiences of this sensitivity that we're talking about. So, you'll be magnetically drawn, as I've said, to people that feel in alignment with you, and then you can have this safe conversation with them and pick their brains about their experiences to validate your experiences, if that makes sense to you. So I want to ask you a few questions before we finish this conversation. I want to also ask you, how are you vibrating? Now, what I mean about vibrating, I'm talking about frequency, vibes, good vibes, bad vibes, confused vibes. What messages are you portraying outwardly into the ether, out into the universe? You may want to analyze that by how you're thinking and how you're feeling. And if you're focusing in on those thoughts and those feelings, then that will be what you're broadcasting out into the ether. And as many of you know, when we are broadcasting that, we're spell casting in many respects. In other words, we're creating a magnetic vibrational alignment, creating manifesting opportunities. So you may want to observe how you're interacting in your experience of life, because some of the results that you are getting, whether good or bad, will be because of your vibrations and where you're placing your time, your attention, and your focus. And again, my next question is, what are you attracting? So you may be having experiences in your life with people, friends, family, work, career, jobs, relationships, finances. The list goes on. Every single aspect of your life. What are you attracting? And in some aspects, I believe that, the manifestation process, we put that thought out, the universe matches that thought and brings in an opportunity or what we're wanting to attract into our into our vibration. And with that being the case, sometimes we have changed vibrationally. We've changed with our thoughts, with our thinking, our belief systems. But what we're experiencing is a delay of how we used to think and what we used to feel and experience. And we're just having to work our way through that situation. And in those situations, it is my belief that this is also a gift of contrast, where we can decide, yes, that worked for me. I had those thoughts, those belief systems in the past, and I enjoyed them, but now that's not me. And so I want something different, something better. So with that, your vibration changes and you get onto a new vibrational alignment with something that is true vibrationally for you in that new moment. So just a few things for you to think about there with this discussion today, but I hope you found it fascinating and interesting. And it would be amazing to hear from you all of any of your encounters or experiences of the thinning of the veil. As we've said, that this has been happening for quite some time now, a good few years, but it's ramping up as we begin to enter 2026. So please do get in touch with me. And just if you're wanting to do that, to share your stories with the show, then you can go to my website, www.glennboddicespiritualmedium.com, or you can email me at glennboddice@live.co.uk. And as ever, it's always a privilege and a pleasure to interact with you all. And please say if you give your permission for me to share your information with the audience as well. So how is everybody doing? I just thought I'd touch base with you all. And how are you finding this very interesting year of 2026? As you may or may not know, I've recently, just literally a week ago, experienced being 50. And my experience of being this age is quite unusual because in my mind, more experience, more knowledge, more wisdom, yet physically and energetically speaking, I feel like I'm still in my 30s. And I feel as though there's a lot more, shall we say, miles on the clock for me yet. But my perception of being 50 is that of an interesting one. And it's because I've begun to realize that it's the small things that matter the most in life. And what I mean by that, I'm talking about things that we took for granted, little gestures of kindness, the energy behind somebody being kind, the thoughts that people have behind somebody being kind when they're directed towards you. To me, I feel that intention, I feel that energy so deeply, and I feel so humbled and appreciative of people having that. And obviously, with having the 50th birthday, I was overwhelmed with the amount of well-wishers and celebrations and cards and gifts, and it just blew my mind away. And to me, that is the difference stepping into 50. For me, I've become more sensitive, more appreciative, and also less time for drama and nonsense talk. And what I mean by nonsense talk, I'm sure everybody listening to this will have appreciated or experienced what I'm about to say. And that is where you're in an environment and people are just talking absolute rubbish in order to keep their brains ticking over to stop them getting bored, rather than having an interactive deep dive discussion or talking things of relevance or information that would help the collective. Instead, they're just rambling, almost like chewing gum, verbally speaking, that is. And it's of no sustenance what they're saying to the mind, to the energy. Well, for me, I've noticed that I don't really have time for that. And I'm not pointing the finger of blame at anybody or judging anybody by saying this statement. All I'm saying is that I've noticed that is where my viewpoint from now on. So I'm happy for people to carry on as they will, do their own thing. But for me, I kind of switch off in those environments mentally when that is there, because I don't want to give my power, my attention, my energy to something that's not in alignment with me. Having said that, I fully respect other people's opinions and their thoughts, and if that makes them happy, then power to them. But for me, it's just not matching up anymore. So that's the difference. I don't know if it's an age thing or why I'm having that experience, but that's what I'm noticing in the first week of being 50. Also, opportunities as well, being a little bit more chilled out about life. And as long as you are putting intention out there, as long as you are making some sort of movement forward, the rest will take care of itself. So I'm noticing that I'm doing that more, whereas at one time I would have worried, I would have fretted, how's this going to work? How's that going to happen? Now I don't do that. I simply do what I can, be the best version as I can in each moment, and then everything will slot into place and take care of itself. So that has changed within my vibration, I've noticed, in the first week of my 50th year. But I'm enjoying it. Life feels an adventure, but it feels more, I don't know, it just feels different. It feels like a new chapter. That's what I'm trying to say with this piece. So anybody else experiencing that in this year of 2026? You don't have to be 50 to experience what I'm describing to you, but this is just my experience that I'm sharing with you. Anyway, we're going to move into this week's channeling from the world of spirit. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the wisdom from spirit.
We'd like to talk to you about verbal and non-verbal communication. This is something that's often overlooked by you in your society. There's a lot of energy going round. As you know, those of you that are paying attention will feel it and also hear it. But in our conversation today, let's talk about the verbal communication. Words, as you know, contain an energy, a frequency, and depending upon that choice of the, shall we say, communicator, the word will be emitting a tone at vibrational frequency. So, with the words being exchanged and the information being exchanged, that will cause the intellect in the mind to configure that information, as you know, into a coherent sentence. Yet the energy speaks another language, and this language is often felt through the heart and the heart chakra. It's a feeling tone, and that feeling tone will emit another form of communication. And so what we're alluding to with this conversation today is that when you are speaking with people and interacting with people, there will be these two forms of communication that will be occurring simultaneously. And it is up to you as the listener, as the observer, to unpick the truth vibrations in both of those communications. Now, what you will be finding in these current circumstances, these current timelines, is that the words that you are hearing will not be matching the feelings that you are feeling. And that is simply because there is a misalignment in communication. But those of you that are paying attention and observing both elements of this level of communication will read between the lines and feel and sense the true essence of that communication. The reason why we speak to you in this manner today is to make you more aware of the truth of what's really happening, of what's really going on. As there's a lot of individuals at this moment in time that are telling you that they're doing really well in their life and they're very happy, they're content, and everything's going swimmingly for them. Yet their vibrational energy frequency is telling a different story. And what we want you to do is to go into that feeling tone. As you, as a light worker, as a vessel, as a vessel of love and light in this dimension will have the ability, by listening and feeling that communication, in transmuting that energy. So we're talking about the feeling tone communication that they're offering you. Maybe out of alignment with the words that they are speaking. Well, with you transmuting this energy, just by you listening and paying attention and understanding the information that's being exchanged to you, in essence, you are turning that vibration around into a positive, loving and healing vibration, so that they can feel more uplifted in themselves, more in alignment, and so that their communications match up, if you understand our meaning. So it's very important that you're aware of these two forms of communication. There are other forms of communications, as you know, such as sign language for those that have the inability to communicate through verbal. And also there's the sign of body language and gestures as well. That's similar to sign language, but in another way. Now, as you know, that contains a level of communication and can be misinterpreted depending upon the observer's governing influence. In other words, what they've aligned with throughout the course of their life. So one gesture might mean several gestures to somebody else. It's all down to personal interpretation. But we say to you that always, upon any communication you engaged in, that you follow the feeling tone first. Always go with the feeling tone, because, as you've heard many times before, energy doesn't lie. True energy flows, and you'll know when something's out of alignment because you'll feel it. It does not resonate with you when something is an untruth. So this is very important for you to understand, particularly with the information that's being exchanged with you in your level of society. There'll be those in higher places within the societal order, and those that, shall we say, are in positions of power in your world that will be communicating to you at face value through the medium of words. And those that are paying attention, as we say, are feeling into their communications, will soon know that what they're saying doesn't match the truth of the situation. It's merely a ruse, a charade in order to manipulate your conscious thinking, so that they can have some sort of control or power over you, and withheld that power over you. So now is a time for you to take personal responsibility by being that beautiful vessel of light that you are, and that interpreter and transmuter of energy and vibration. You have the choice at any moment to feel into a conversation on an energetic level. But most of you do not. We are not judging you for this. It's simply the way that you've been brought up in your societal roles. And it's a case of you having to go through some inner workings, doing some inner work in order to clear these old belief systems that are no longer true. And you'll do this by feeling into the vibration behind the subconscious belief system. Once you do that, a lot of you will be somewhat amazed with what you discover, as a lot of what you perceive to be true is in fact not at all. It's a charade, it's a ruse, it's a manipulation of power that's been used, a spell if you like, that's been cast upon you to keep you small and indoctrinated by these misalignments. So with this in mind, we hope it has given you some scope in order to think differently and feel differently when you're communicating with others. We thank you so much for listening and taking on board these energies behind this communication, as most of you will feel the vibration of truth behind them.
Fascinating communication there from the world of spirit, and I hope you can all take something from that information that they brought. With the channeling being mentioned, I do offer an online transmediumship development circle which happens twice a month on a Monday at 7:30 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time till 9:30 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. This takes place over a private Zoom link, and for the cost of £10 for that. It is aimed at those mediums or sensitives that have an understanding of their chakra systems, have their spirit guides in place, and vibration, alignment, have meditation practice as well, that's wanting to take their mediumship to the next level. So if you're interested in that, please do contact me via my website or email address, and I can share more information about you joining the Transmedium class where you develop what you've just heard there so that you can do it. So now we're going to move into a sneaky peek into this week's forecast reading. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the information from Spirit. Hello, my name is Glenn Boddice and I'm a spiritual medium, and welcome to this week's energy forecast reading for the week commencing Monday the 26th of January 2026. Now, those of you that have watched me work before will know that I connect with my spirit guides and helpers and also consult the wisdom of the angel tarot card. So what I'm about to do is shuffle the pack and allow a card to come out for this week's forecast reading. So this is your card. I'm now going to link into the vibration of that. First of all, very strongly, my guides are saying for me to tell you, keep calm, keep your head while all those around you are losing theirs. This week will ask you to be calm, more relaxed, and trust that intuition of yours, following the vibration, the feelings from your heart. People will look up to you and ask for your opinion and look and consult your wisdom for the help with their life. I do feel as though there's a lot of stress, not with you, but around you, and you need to keep that strong composure. I'm also sensing there's going to be an urge to try something new in your life, to shake things up a little bit. And I feel as though this is you actually stepping outside of your comfort zone and throwing caution to the wind, so to speak. I do feel as though you'll be questioning what is worth your time, what is worth your effort. And already we're a few weeks into 2026 and you're already starting. This is the end of the free version of the weekly forecast reading. If you would like to see the entirety of this week's forecast reading, then you can do that by subscribing. And as a subscriber, what you will receive is the full version of the weekly forecast reading. You will also receive the audio for the weekly radio show, and also you'll receive 10% off all of my spiritual services there. So this includes all of the readings there for you to benefit from. And also you will receive new updates and information and news of what's happening with myself and the services that I provide, and also the events that I take part in. You'll hear all about that ahead of everybody else. And this is because you're a subscriber to Glenn Boddice Spiritual Medium. So you can find a link either above or below this video, where by clicking on the link, you can then become a subscriber to reap all of the benefits that I've described to you. So I look forward to having you on this journey with me as a Glenn Boddice Spiritual Medium subscriber. Thank you for taking time to watch this video and supporting the work that Spirit and myself work together in doing so. Well, thank you for tuning in this week. I hope you've enjoyed the content from Spirit and myself, and it gives you a little bit of a different perspective in life. If you have any show suggestions or you'd like to get in touch, please contact me at www.glennboddicespiritualmedium.com or email me at glennboddice@live.co.uk. And join me next Monday, the same place, same time, 4 p.m. on all of the social medias with this very show. Have a fabulous week, everybody. Take care and God bless. Thank you for listening to From Beyond. For more information about what products and services Glenn provides, go to glennboddice spiritualmedium.com.